midsummer's evening and a game of cricket in the local club. A fairly usual sight, but this is a lone girl in a man's world. Sonia Twig is the only woman who's ever played for this men's club. She's the outsider here, but Sonia is one of thousands of women who are closing in on parity in the sport. However, playing with 20-odd men still has its difficulties.
One of the biggest issues though is in terms of changing facilities. So there'll be 2 changing rooms, but obviously for me that's not going to work. So quite often there'll be a women's toilet, which is usually where I have to get changed, and there isn't necessarily anywhere else.
But Sonia's club is welcoming. She often forgets that she's the only girl on the field. It's off the field that she still finds herself slightly out of place.
I couldn't really join the social aspect because then I'd be very conscious I was the only girl. It was never so much of an issue playing, but that's not why you play cricket. You play cricket for the social aspect as much as the playing aspect, and I always felt that if I did go to a pub evening or something like that I'd be very conscious that I was the only girl.
Women's cricket has gone through a lot more gloom than Sonia's tale. Legendary England cricketer Sir Leonard Hutton allegedly said, "Women playing cricket, that's absurd, just like a man trying to knit." Outrageous in every sense of the word. And even when they did play, women weren't allowed to step into pavilions like this one. Worse still, female cricketers were forced to juggle jobs. Today, professional contracts mean they can practice and play full-time, but they're miles away from what the men earn on a daily basis. But England have beaten the odds to become world champions. More importantly, women's abilities are now being taken seriously.
I think the main thing is it shows, the strength of the women's game. It shows how amazing that World Cup tournament was last year and just how much it kind of captured the imagination. To have 3 of the 5 Wisden cricketers of the year to be female is obviously unprecedented, and hopefully all it does is it signals the way for years to come.
I feel like we're more accessible and more relatable really. They've seen, hopefully they've seen, the popularity that we've got, and it's not just a joke, it's a serious thing. We're earning a living. And I think we're more welcomed at grounds and at stadiums.
I made my debut in Mumbai in a dusty club ground in front of not many people, and some of the girls making their debuts now at home playing in front of near sold out grounds on telly with a lot more people interested in what's going on. So the game has changed dramatically. There's a lot more sort of pressure on players to perform, and that's what you want. You want to be at the level where you're judged as a cricketer, not just kind of as a women's cricketer, I guess.
Anya Shrubsole also became the first ever woman to feature on the cover of what is known as the Bible of Cricket. Theory was this was a classic instance of tokenism. But the man who put her there wasn't trying to make cheap headlines. He was looking for rectification.
For too long, cricket has not taken women's cricket seriously, and I include Wisden in that. The first women's Test match took place in 1934-35, England v Australia, and it wasn't reported by Wisden until 1938. So that was an early example of sexism, really, institutionalised sexism within cricket. So last year was a bit about correcting an imbalance. I mean, you can't just correct overnight 155 years of history, but you can take a step in the right direction. But more importantly, England won the World Cup. It was as simple as that. And if we weren't going to reflect that, what are we doing covering cricket? This was the moment to reflect the achievements of the England women's team. If the men's team had won the World Cup, no one would have batted an eyelid if we'd chosen 3 of the winners among the 5. So why should it be different for women?
The origins of cricket take us back to 16th century England. But the first women's international game took place more than 300 years later. Today, their game is very similar to the men's. There aren't any concessions for women as such. They play with the same laws as the men are doing here. But the only differences are, the cricket ball the women use is slightly smaller and the boundaries are slightly closer. But physiologically, men are stronger. They can hit the ball further and bowl it faster, which always entertains crowds. The women's game might not look as attractive, but this brand of cricket has already inspired a generation of young girls to take up the sport. Amongst them is 7-year-old Alethea. She already spends her weekends swinging a bat and spinning a ball. It seems as though cricket was forced onto her, as her father is a former international cricketer himself. But Alethea has cricketing heroines, not heroes.
there was not enough, and there isn't still enough women's sport on TV. And if there is women's sport, Alethea will watch it. If it's men's sport, she's not really so bothered. So having that amount of sport on TV and having females on TV in leading roles and presenting and all that is become something that I've become a lot more aware of, because it means that she has role models. It means that my daughter has people that she can aspire to.
There's also been a change in viewers' attitudes towards the sport. Here at Headingley again, there's a game between two teams of young boys from India and England. But the spectators at the ground consist largely of women, who now equally enjoy watching both genders play their favourite sport.
For me, it's certainly no less interesting, and I watch women's cricket if that's on TV just as much as men's cricket.
I think it's superb. I'm pleased to see women playing cricket and to such a high standard.
It's a sport which girls and boys can play. It's not just a boys' sport, because I play for the under-9 boys.
Women's cricket isn't struggling to find any viewers, be it in the stands or in front of a television. But it still trails the men's game in one key area, and the answer is in my wallet. The probe into why the women's game still lacks money brings me here, home of two iconic cricketing venues. Overlooking the latter is James Alder's office. His agency represents some of the biggest names in world cricket, but to this day, his clients don't include a single female cricketer.
If you look at the female game and the women's game, it is exploding at the moment in terms of popularity. That's very much on an upward curve, but that's a relatively recent trend. If you think in the men's game, there are a plethora of sort of freelance cricketing opportunities. There isn't that for the women's game, so it's not a huge amount of activity to get your teeth into as an agent at the moment. If these other competitions start cropping up and there's a lot of money pumped into them, then suddenly that might be a time where, you know, representing female cricketers is more of an attractive proposition to agencies like ours.
Currently, India's captain Mithali Raj is amongst the highest earning female cricketers in the world. But her male counterpart, the richest cricketer in the world, earns a paycheck 50 times bigger than hers. When stacked up against the heavyweights in other sports around the globe, Raj is reduced to nothing more than a speck of dust next to the world's highest earning athlete as of this year. But female cricketers believe comparison with the men's game isn't the right way to go about it. Women's cricket is still in its infancy, and there's a lot more that needs fixing. But the opinions suggest it's uphill from here for the girls.
Everything's moving in the right direction. I'm not sure there's a huge amount to do differently. And obviously the more people who know about it and come and watch it, and then hopefully they come and watch and see how good it is, and then they keep coming back.
I see the chat all the time now about women's cricket. You see on social media, on Twitter. So I think it's a question of more investment, more time, more patience, and standards will keep rising.
People have sort of come up to me and mentioned like, oh, women's cricket's really good, like I watched some of the World Cup, and I don't think a lot of them will have watched any women's cricket before.
I think we will see it certainly have a higher level of viewership and a higher following, and I don't think that's too far away. It hasn't peaked. But by no means it hasn't peaked, and there's still a long way to go. But it's going to grow, and it's going to grow rapidly.
Perhaps cricket will remain a male-dominated sport, but women are now in the race. Their game is slowly emerging from darker times. Women's cricket is on the rise.